We didn't start with much, just a piece of land, a plan, and a whole lot of learning. If you're thinking about starting a homestead, here are 5 things you should know before diving in. Hey everyone, I'm Angie, and welcome back to Half Wild, Half Wired. We're living the off-grid homestead life up here in Vermont. And today I'm going to go over 5 essential things you should know to start you off with your homestead so you won't be burning out or going broke. The first thing we're going to cover, well, we're standing on it, is land. Choosing the right land is everything. There's a lot of factors that go into it. You want to look for property or land that has great agricultural value and preferably no zoning. Trust me on that. You don't want to be stuck in an HOA or be stuck where you are having to run permits. You can do that, but it's preferable if you find a piece of land where there's no zoning. And that may mean you need to go to a different state. Um, Here in Vermont, there's actual towns where there are zoning laws, and there's towns here where there's no zoning laws. I live in a town where there's no zoning, and that was very much on purpose. So you want to be sure that you pick land that meets your goals. If you want to have agricultural crops, if you want to have an apple orchard or blueberry orchard, if you're going to have farm animals, you need to know what type of water or streams are nearby. That is extremely important. And you can test soil, you can test the water before you purchase land. So keep that in mind. You also want to know where the sun comes in and where is it the sun set, because if you're planning on building solar, that is important. Um, One thing I wish we investigated a little bit better was Vermont does have very high taxes. There's other areas in the country where there's no zoning and less property taxes. That is one thing I wish we investigated better. Not to say that I don't love living in Vermont, but there are different states that do have a much better property tax value than where we live here in Vermont. Second item you want to do is clearly define your goals. What do you want to do when you're off-grid and homesteading? Is your goal to be sustainable? Do you want to have livestock? Do you want to raise chickens either for egg collection or meat? Do you want to raise your own cattle, sheep? Do you want to have your own farm, or do you want to start a community farm? It is very important to write down on paper, or the newer millennials here, type up your goals on a computer and just go through a list of what are your main goals. Because once you have that goal set in place, then you can start looking into land that will fulfill those goals. And sticking to 2 to 3 main goals is important when you're first starting out. Like, one of our first things was building the house and getting solar. Those were our 2 main goals when starting our homestead. It's good to have a long-term list of goals, but I tell you, if you try to do everything on your list, you are going to reach burnout, and you most likely are going to go broke. Number 3, start building small systems. So if you're going to do, say, you want to have livestock, build some fencing, either electric fence or a post and beam type fencing. Build a chicken coop. If you plan to have solar on your homestead, set up a solar system. Or rainwater collection, if that's one of the things that you need when you first start out, start with that. You don't want to build all of your systems at once, because it's going to be a very challenging time. When you first start a homestead, a lot of people will live right off the land. They'll either buy a small yurt or live in a camper or a small RV while they're building their long-term housing. And just keep that in mind. If you don't like camping, you most likely won't like living off grid or on a homestead. So keep that in mind because it is like permanent camping. Number 4, budgeting and bartering. Homesteading isn't free. Even when you're frugal, things add up very quickly. You've got solar you've got to pay for, the land if you've got a loan, chickens, fencing, rainwater collection. It all adds up. But learning how to barter definitely can be a way to save money. So if you have a skill or a skill set that you can trade with a neighbor, or even in your community, you can barter your skill set for an item that you want, and vice versa. It's also good to meet your neighbors, even if they aren't off grid. They can help look after your property, and vice versa. You can look after theirs. So if there's something that's going awry, not going to plan, neighbors will definitely talk to each other. And often a lot of people forget about wants versus needs. Really sit down and you need to have discipline. Do I really want this, or is this something I absolutely cannot live without? And when you are starting a homestead, you really have to dial into that mindset. You don't need to go to your local coffee drive-through every single day. It's a luxury, but do you really need it? No. So start cutting out things that are not adding value to your homestead. It can be really hard at first, but I tell you, it takes a lot of discipline to be able to save up enough money to be able to buy land and to just start your homestead. Some people go from city living, they'll actually sell off their entire house. They'll sell the furniture, they'll sell um, obviously the house itself, and then whatever money they get from that, they will use that to buy the land and go from there. And also check out local groups. Look for secondhand things online. Sometimes some communities have local antique shops or sawmills, and you'd be surprised what you can barter for. And I've got fresh homestead eggs on our property, and I've used that actually to barter for hay for our goats. If you're able to make baked goods, that can be another thing that can be used to barter for something else that you need for the homestead. Also check out secondhand items on online communities, or if there's a local barn or sawmill where you need lumber, you may be able to barter some skills or barter things on your homestead in order to get the things that you do need for your homestead. So bartering does take some skill to do, but over time you start to learn how to do it, and you're working towards something for your homestead, so you generally have a deeper appreciation for it. Number 5, building a community when you're homesteading. Oftentimes, when you are starting your homesteading adventure, you often feel like you're the only one out here. But there's other forms and communities that you can learn from. You can go on YouTube, right here on TikTok as well, Facebook. Go on your social media platforms, look at other homesteaders, interact with them, ask questions, because that's how we learn. Um, Generally, though, wherever you live, you can often find other people that are off grid. We actually have some neighbors right across from us that are off grid, and we have a few more that are off grid down the road. So don't feel like you're alone. And if you do, even the homesteaders that have larger platforms, do not be afraid to ask them questions, because I've actually learned some of the best advice from those bigger creators. And what it comes down to is they are everyday people just like us. They started from ground zero as well, and they know what it's like to start a homestead from nothing. So don't be afraid to reach out, including reaching out to me. I would say I'm just an intermediate homesteader. I'm very new in this. We're 5 years into this, and growing and learning does not end. You can always learn something new when you're on a homestead. So, if you are dreaming of starting a homestead, I would recommend starting slow. Make sure you have clear goals in mind and grow very slowly over time. And drop me a comment down below. What is your biggest homestead dream? What are some of the obstacles that are holding you back from living this lifestyle? Now, would you rather live in a city paying rent every month and not have it go towards something? Or would you rather take a chance, buy some land, and see what can happen? What I've learned in my life is you never know unless you try. And failures, well, they're just learning opportunities. I wouldn't exactly call it a failure because when you learn something, you can adjust and try again. So sometimes it's that fear of failure that prevents us from starting something in the first place. But for me, 5 years ago, I took that leap, and my husband and I went off grid, and we are absolutely loving it.